get into the divorce space, it's probably the most complex real estate an agent can take. But sometimes what can get in the way is our biases. So we can sometimes have a bias, a lot of moving parts and pieces to these transactions that a new agent is just not yet prepared to do. So how do I become a certified divorce real estate expert or a CDRE? I get this question all the time. People DM me, call me, text me, email me, wanting to know what is the process to become one. And so here, I'm going to go ahead and break it down for you. So in order to become a CDRE, the first thing is that we only take experienced agents. The reason why is because to get into the divorce space, it's probably the most complex real estate an agent can take. We're dealing with property that's under litigation, two people that do not get along that we have to represent on the same side of the transaction. We've got court orders that have to be followed. And a lot of times in divorce cases, the property is not kept up. It's a lot of times got deferred maintenance because the sale of the property is actually not the most important thing going on in the divorce case. Secondly, the title to the property is oftentimes clouded with something. So we often see, mortgage payments haven't been made. There could be liens or judgment and, IRS liens. There could be bankruptcy. So a lot of moving parts and pieces to these transactions that a new agent is just not yet prepared to do. So we require that an agent has at least completed 45 transactions and 3 years of experience. So that's just bare minimum to even get an appointment. And once someone has gotten an appointment, they go through basically a screening interview. Then they are set up with a more intense interview, which is done by one of our CDRE admissions counselors, and it's done via Zoom. So we also require your resume, proof of production, letters of recommendation, and an essay prior to your interview being conducted. So we do all of these things. And then once you've passed your interview, then you are invited to become a CDRE. We run classes every single month. So then once you've passed your interview and all of our application process, then you're admitted into our program. And we have classes that start every month on the first Monday of each and every month. So it is a 12-week program, and each week has a lesson. And then we have live office hours that is done with me. It's on Zoom, and that's done on Thursdays. And then there's a weekly test on Friday. So our lessons, they range from week 1, we have orientation. Then we have the intersection of divorce and real estate, because it's really important that we understand how the litigation process and the process of a divorce, where does real estate fit into all of that? So we as realtors are used to not having to work with these strings of, litigation and courts and that sort of thing involved in our listing. But it's really important that we understand what their process is so that our process can kind of dovetail with it nicely. Then we have a class on, it's called Taking the Stand, and that has to do with testifying. So as a divorce real estate agent, you are the number one witness to everything going on with the sale of the property typically. So it's important that we know and we are willing to testify should things go awry. The court may need to hear from us. They may need to know what steps we have taken to get something done, or what did we see and what are our recommendations for the court. So we have a whole section on testifying. We then have a code of ethics that is above and beyond the NAR code of ethics. And so we have a whole section on our ethics as well as on attorney ethics, because lawyers also have their ethics. Sometimes our ethics and don't necessarily align, and we need to understand what theirs are so that we don't step on attorney toes. Then we have a lesson on bias and neutrality. Those are kind of two separate things, but understanding that we are neutrals. So we have to ensure that we show up as neutrals, we behave as neutrals, our communication, all of that is done in a neutral capacity. But sometimes what can get in the way is our biases. So we can sometimes have a bias against certain type of person or a certain type of personality or those sorts of things. Everyone has biases. So it's important that we understand what ours are, we recognize them so that we can get past them and show up as neutrals. Otherwise, we become aligned with one side, and that is not going to work. So then we have lesson 6 is our divorce listing process. So when you take a listing in a divorce case, there is a very specific protocol that we have and that we teach. And it's actually based on how I've constructed my listings for 19 years. And we want to make sure that we prevent as many conflicts, we prevent pitfalls, we see things before the clients do. And when we do get into conflict and issues, that we mitigate those. So it's really important that we don't just kind of take a regular listing process and apply it to a situation like this. We are one step ahead of our clients, and we also ensure that we are neutral. Then we have a section on divorce finance. So getting a loan, whether someone is trying to do a buyout in a divorce or whether someone is trying to buy a house after the sale or even sometime in the future, there are very specific underwriting guidelines as to obtaining a mortgage incident to divorce. So it's important that as we realtors are working with clients who are getting a divorce and who are going to be obtaining a loan, we understand some of those guidelines. We are certainly not divorce mortgage professionals, but we need to make sure that we are proficient so that when we do work with clients who are obtaining a mortgage, that we can advise them and kind of direct them into the right path appropriately. And then our 8th week is about business development. So in order to build a business and be a resource to family law attorneys and clients, it's important that we understand how we need to build our business very appropriately. Because once you've had this type of education, you truly have so much to offer to the family law community. It is really our mission to ensure that divorcing homeowners are given the best chance at maximizing their equity so that they can move on in their life, and so that it's done with the least amount of credit damage, and they can literally come out of this divorce listing in the best possible light. It's also important that we educate divorce attorneys and divorce professionals because they're being asked to give advice, to construct orders, to craft agreements that have to do with the real estate portion of a case. And most of the time, attorneys or judges are just not familiar with all of the nuances and regulations and guidelines and best practices with regards to real estate. So it's important that we educate them so that they can be better practitioners. And last but not least, the better job we do, we are going to mitigate the conflict, which has a great impact on the judicial economy. So what's the judicial economy? The judicial economy has to do with basically the workload of courts and of judges. And the more that litigants have to go into court and have to have judges make decisions for them, the more bogged down the system gets. So if we can do our job effectively and appropriately, then we will in fact reduce how many times a judge is going to have to hear issues with regards to the real estate piece of the divorce. So our job is very important in the whole role of a divorce case and of the family law system. So we educate realtors so that they are very well equipped with that. And having said that, it's also important that, like I said, we introduce ourselves to our family law communities in such a way that they understand it, that we're not just a typical agent looking for their next deal, that we actually are there to walk alongside guide them and to be an expert resource to handle this piece of the case. We see ourselves as divorce professionals just in the real estate aspect of the case. So we then teach a step-by-step business development program. So that's the last 4 weeks. Remember, I said it was a 12-week program. So I've just walked you through the first 8, and then the last 4 have to do with, how to build your database, how to introduce yourself to attorneys appropriately, and how to maintain, the follow-up so that you are constantly providing value to family law attorneys, because there is an immense amount of information that we have at hand. There's an immense amount of experience that we have that the family law attorneys and system really needs and can utilize. We just have to know how to tap into it and how to bring it to them. So that is, in a nutshell, how you become a certified divorce real estate expert. We then have a final exam, and our final exam, it's a 50 question, a true, false, multiple choice, and then it's 2 parts. So that is part 1. Part 2 is a live mock testimony with one of our family law attorneys. So you'll show up on Zoom. You'll be all prepared. Don't worry, but you'll show up on Zoom and you will actually do a mock testimony as though you are on the stand. So that's how you do it. And then once you become a CDRE, there are a couple of paths. One is if you're invited to join our master club, which is our monthly support where we go through case studies. You have 24/7 access to the team, to the community. We provide you with consistent education each and every week. We have some sort of a meeting and a Zoom where we're pouring education back into you, whether it's case studies or masterminds, any special speakers that we have. You will also be given information on how to invite your attorneys to our Raising the Bar, which is our monthly CLE that we put on for family law attorneys throughout the country. So our master club is really the community that you want to be in if you are getting into this space. That's where you want to be. And it's not for everyone. So that certainly is understandable. And so if you don't want to be in master club, you can still be a CDRE. We just have continuing education annually that you must fulfill. And then you can continue retaining your CDRE credential at that point. So anyway, hopefully this has answered your question. If you continue to have any questions and answer your questions, please drop me a comment. I look at my comments. I will make sure that I answer it for you. If you have a question, I'm sure somebody else has a question. So, I'm sure it's worthwhile to drop a comment and continue to subscribe to my channel so that I can continue to give you guys information, because realtors are a vital part of the process in divorce. And so I'm all very passionate about ensuring that our industry is educated. Have a good one, everybody.